The problem of visualizing high-dimensional data on a 2D map like this. And that's the goal of self-organizing maps. So in that regard, self-organizing maps is not really a clustering tool. It's just a visualization tool to visualize high-dimensional data on a 2D map. But if you're able to visualize all of your data on a 2D map like this, by inspecting this 2D image, you can also find clusters in your data, right? I mean, you said groups that are similar, they are going to appear in similar locations on this map. So you can, by viewing this map, you can identify certain groups of objects that are close to each other and far away from the others, and which can reveal clusters at the end. So this picture is actually misleading. I mean, these colors, we do not, what does this color mean? For example, this color is in some three-dimensional space, in color space, RGB space, for example. What if it is 10-dimensional object? We will not be able to see, put any color here. All we do is, we just put some points on this map, onto in some positions on this map, and similar objects end up in nearby locations. That's our goal. Now, here's the components of self-organizing maps. The first thing is the main component is the data you are going to cluster. That's called the sample data. The sample data may be named, there may be other terminologies in terms of sample data. What you may see is data set or weights. I'm not sure the other terminologies, but what we have is the sample data. If we go back to our student example, these are the students and their files, their features. The feature values of each student is your sample data. There are 100 students that you want to put on this 2D map, okay? And those 100 students with their GPAs, the year they are born, all these features, they are your sample data. Here, a student is going to be represented in a high-dimensional space. How many features you are going to have is that your student is going to be a point in that high-dimensional space. Another example may be color, okay? The vector representation is 3 representation, color is a 3-dimensional. But 3 dimensions is not a very good example for self-organizing map because you can visualize 3 dimensions. So in color space is easy to visualize actually. But this example that students or people is difficult if we are going to put 400 students on this map and we represent them with a 100-dimensional vector, age, gender, height, weight, hair color, eye color, GPA, the year born, all these things, class level, all these things is going to make a certain student a high-dimensional point, a 100-dimensional point in a 100-dimensional space. Now, the other components are, is the map, okay? The map is another component. So we have the data we want to put on the map, okay? We have these students, 400 students that we want to put on the map. And the other component, important component, is the map. If you are going to put these 400 students on the map, for example, what is the size of the map? I mean, what is 2D picture? What is the size of that 2D picture? I told you that in the last hour. So we are going to place a student onto a position on this map. We are going to place another student onto another position in the map. And our goal is to put similar students on similar positions on the map. Okay? So what we need is that this map, if you think about it, is a discrete image, like an image with pixels in it. What we need is the resolution of this image. Where am I putting these students? They are put onto a certain XY coordinate on this image, and this image has a certain resolution. That's your map. I mean, it's not something that you draw on an empty sheet of paper on computer. You need to have some. If you think about a digital map, you need to think about the pixels and how many pixels you are going to have. Now, actually, forget about this slide right now. It may be confusing, the n-dimensional vector at each pixel. So the first thing we need to have is this map. And on this map, I told you that we need to be able to put students on this map. One way, if you don't do self-organizing maps, for example, you can do something like this. Now, forget about the next slide I'm going to show, but think about it like this. Again, 400 students, there are 100 dimensions. Put these 400 students onto a map. If I tell you this, probably you are going to get yourself a map which has 400 pixels, right? A 400 pixel map is a 20 by 20 map if it's a square map. If you're going to visualize the students on a square map, you are going to use a 400 by 400, 20 by 20 image, which has 400 pixels, and you are going to locate each of these students onto one position on this map, right? And at the end, similar feature students, you want to group them into similar pixel locations, right? And you may have a matrix like this. What are you going to store in that matrix? I mean, what does it mean to put a student in a pixel? For example, we may have a student ID, right? We may have a certain key which is able to determine a student uniquely, or a pointer to that student saying that, okay, this pixel belongs to that student. I mean, what I'm talking about right now is practically, if you implement it, if you write a program, how would you represent this 20 by 20 image? How would you represent it? And how would you implement putting a student on a pixel on this image? How would you do that? I mean, what I would do is, I would have an integer matrix, 20 by 20. I mean, if you write it in C, I will have an integer matrix M, 20 by 20. And each matrix entry, for example, putting a student in a matrix position, for example, 1, 3, would be to have that student ID assigned to that location, okay? That student ID is going to be put into this location. It's this student, and I'm going to put a student with similar features into a close by location. Okay, this is how you are going to fill in the whole matrix. 400 values are going to be filled in, so that at the end you are going to, but still for visualization, at the end what you're going to get is 20 by 20 matrix of student IDs. Okay, so it's still, in terms of visualization, does not provide you anything, but by looking at this matrix, you can understand which students, by looking at those student IDs, you can understand which students have similar features. I mean, if there are nearby locations on this matrix, it means that their 100-dimensional features are similar to each other. That's why you put them into closed locations on this map, right? So at the end, you are going to have this 20 by 20 matrix of student IDs. And when you're implementing this, you need to make sure each student occupies a single place on this matrix. For example, if you put a student ID here, if you don't put the same student ID in another place on the matrix. I mean, a single student ID should appear once on this matrix because we have 400 places reserved for 400 students. Okay, so your map maybe looks something like this. So this is now you understand the purpose of the map, right? I mean, a map. One thing you can say is that why did we decide to have a 20 by 20 matrix? Okay, it was a design choice. I mean, we could have a 10 by 40 matrix, or what other things can be better than a matrix? A 2D map, does it really have to be square? it may be circular like this, 400 pixels put in a circle like this. Because look at these edges. Students on these edges are going to be far away from each other. I mean, what I mean is that at the boundaries, there's this sharp corner here, which says there's a sharp difference between students at that point. Do we really need to have that? Do we really need to have a square matrix? We could have a circular, I mean, it's not going to be a matrix, but we could have a circular map like this. Or could, instead of having the pixels square, they could be hexagons. Okay, I'm just bombarding you with these different choices to tell you that we could have, my main point is that we could have different 2D maps. We could have placed these students onto a 2D map in a different way by designing different types of maps. And this 20 by 20 square matrix was just my design choice. You could have a 10 by 40 matrix. In 10 by 40 matrix, it's like you're trying to place students in a longer map. Our goal is to have, for example, imagine if there are many similar students, are you going to be able to put them in a location, close by location? For example, this map, as you put students in it, is going to get crowded. For example, there is a student here, and there are similar students to that student. Okay? What if there is so there are 8 neighbors around it, which are similar to the student at the center. What if there's a 9th student who is also very similar to that student? You want to put it close to that map, right? But there's no place left around the student. So maybe it's saying that this 8 neighborhood map organization may not be very good. If you can have a 9th member, a 9th neighbor, you may have maybe, how can you solve this problem? It's difficult, right? Maybe layers of maps or trying to change the neighbor. I have 8 neighbors. And that's the reason is I have chosen to have grid-like map like this. There may be ways to increase number of neighbors if you use a different type of organization of this map. Okay, I mean you may increase the 8 neighbors is imposed on me by this matrix representation. You can represent your map in another way to increase the neighbors. So the reason again I'm telling you this, there may be the number of neighbors, whether a certain pixel is a neighbor to you or not, can be different if you use a different map design. And that map is one of the important components. This map is self-organizing map. It's one of the important components of self-organizing map. So we need to decide, apart from this data, 400 students, we need to also consider how we are going to represent these 400 students on a map. What is your map going to look like? This is another component. What self-organizing maps does, its design choices now, are, first of all, it starts with this. Do we really need 400 pixels to store 400 students? I mean, if each pixel is going to represent a unique student, we need 400 pixels, okay? I mean, if we are going to put each of our sample data on a map, we need that many pixels. But what if I have a map with 800 pixels and allow some students to occupy multiple places? Because a student may be similar to this one and maybe similar to that one. So maybe I may have a larger number of pixels and so because our goal at the end is to visualize the relationships between these feature vectors of this sample data set. And what self-organizing maps does is that it really does not care about the number of sample data, this 400, and the number of pixels here may have some loose relationships. They may not be exactly equal. It may be less. If it's less, what it will have is multiple students occupying the same pixel. The only case it can be is if you average those students' features and put it in the same pixel. Or you can have multiple more pixels than your sample data. In that case, certain students' sample data may occupy multiple locations on this map. But at the end, it comes to, again, as a design choice, you can have either equal number of points on your map or a different number of points. And here, now what we did was to use a student ID. In this integer matrix, we use a student ID to say that, okay, I have this data, this student at this pixel. What if there are no student IDs? What if, imagine you are clustering another data set with data points just represented as 100-dimensional points, but they don't have a certain data ID. How would you do? Probably you can say it's not very difficult to assign an ID to a data point. You may assign by yourself. This is my sample point 1, sample point 2, sample point 3, and sample point 400. You can assign by yourself these things. That's possible. But what self-organizing maps does is that, and there are other reasons to do that as well. At each pixel, we store the whole dimension, all 100 features on the pixel itself. Okay? So in other words, we do not have this redirection. We do not have a pointer to a student ID. At a pixel on a map, I store all the 100-dimensional values. So at a pixel here, I do not have a single integer matrix here. What I have is, for example, I define in C, this is in C language, so I define a struct features and bundle all my data, all my features, okay, 100 features. So this struct features looks something like this. It has 100 features in it. For example, int age, character, class level. Okay, so these 100 features, I have them as a C struct, bundled a C struct, and I have a matrix of these structs. So at each matrix position, I have all the features that I have. So this is how the map looks like in self-organizing maps. Okay, a map pixel is able to store all the information about a student. Okay, if you put a student there, it means that you copy the student values onto the features on this pixel. So you can just copy a student's values onto this pixel easily. Okay, now, something a little different what self-organizing map does is, so what you understood the map, right? The map, we may have it as a matrix in this square matrix representation, and we have pixels on this matrix, and each pixel position is able to contain all the features, all the dimensions of a data point. Hence, it's represented like this. So these are all the features that are stored on a pixel location. Now, what I could do is, I could generate random students as well, right? By using a random number generator, you could generate random features. You can just, if I ask everybody a different question, so give me a class level, you say graduate. Give me a year, 1980. Okay, that's what year you're born. Give me a gender, female. If I ask everybody different questions, I can sample a random student. Okay? And I can fill my matrix with random students, 400 random students, which are not taken from my data. Okay? This is independent from your original sample data. You can fill in a map with random students, non-existent random features can be generated and put onto this map. Okay? So the self-organizing maps algorithm starts like this. That's the initial step of a self-organizing map algorithm. After you decide on your map structure, how many pixels you are going to have, what are the features you are going to have on each pixel, we initialize the map with random students, non-existing students. And here's, I hope it's going to make some sense, intuitive. I hope you can also understand it as an intuitive algorithm. This is, I'm now describing how self-organizing map runs, okay? I'm now describing the algorithm without showing you the next slides. This is what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to say fix a number of iterations, say that 1,000, okay? For 1,000 times, I'm going to do this for these 400 students. I'm going to pick one student out of these 400 students randomly. I'm going to pick one student at each iteration. So I have 1,000 iterations. I'm selecting each time a random student from these 400, and at the end of the iteration, I'm going to put that student back into the 400 case. So it's a selection by replacement. So I'm going to select a student. So a student can be selected twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times during these 1,000 iterations. So is this clear? So at each iteration, I say, I'm going to pick one student out of these 400 students. Okay? And at the second iteration, I'm going to pick another student. And it may turn out to be the same student in the first iteration. It's just a random process. I'm going to do this 1,000 times. So what do I do with this randomly selected student? Okay, I selected this student from, it's an existing student, okay? So I select an existing student, real features, and I look at this map. And in the previous hour, the idea that you have suggested is, so we have some random non-existent students on this map. What I can do is I can ask this. Which of these non-existing students is most similar to my selected student? Okay, so this real student, 400 students, I can ask, so I have these random students. Actually, all of them may be far away, but one of them is going to be the closest, okay? So what I'm trying to do is, on this randomly initialized map, I try to find out where my selected student is going to fit best, which is the closest student here on this map. Okay, so you can find it by making 400, how are you going to find this distance? How are you going to find the closest student? How can you compute the distance between two 100-dimensional vectors? Euclidean distance, right? I mean, in computing distance between high-dimensional data points is not very problem. But there's the distance, you may ask this, I mean, whether the distance you are going to get is meaningful or not, that may be a question. There's this curse of dimensionality. It means that when the dimensionality increases, the space becomes so spacey, meaning that many different points, for example, if these 100 students, 400 students in a 100-dimensional space, if you put them on the space, it's like all of them are going to be like equidistant to each other. The relationship between them are going to be lost as the dimensionality increases. Because to fill in a 100-dimensional space, you need billions of points to be able to fill in that space. It means that if with so few students, with only 400 students, in a 100-dimensional space, those 100 students are going to be very far. I mean, they're going to be like all equidistant to each other. I mean, they're not going to be able to fill in this space altogether. So their distance between them, the distance measure between them is that value of distance. The semantics of distance is going to decrease as the dimension. So that's the curse of dimensionality. But still, if we're not interested in the semantics of distance that much, if your goal is just to find the closest student, okay? I mean, they may all be far away from each other in this 100-dimensional space, but if you select this one student and look for the closest student here, the measure of distance, the semantics may not matter to you that much. You are just comparing these 400 distances and picking the smallest one. Okay? So this is, at an iteration of self-organizing map, this is what we do. We select an existing student randomly out of our sample data set, and by computing the Euclidean distance, and you may ask, why compute Euclidean distance? We don't need to. We may use Pearson correlation coefficient, or we may use other distances. We may use Manhattan distance, L1 matrix, or we may use different distance measures, your favorite distance measures. You have to compute distances between 2 points in a high-dimensional space. Euclidean distance is one popular choice. So between the selected point and these 400 random non-existing points on the map, because each point here, I have 100-dimensional features. They are struct, okay? They are struct, so I can compute a distance between my selected one and a random one here. You do it 400 times, and you select the minimum. What you do is at the end, you say, my selected student, for example, is closest to this pixel here, okay? This is at the end of the first iteration, you determine this. My selected student is closest to this pixel. And this is what we do next, which is a very important step in self-organizing maps, is that this student here that we selected, real student, drops into this pixel location like a bomb, okay, and influences the random students in a certain neighborhood. It says that, okay, I have these features. This was the closest pixel to me, which was non-existing. The first thing it does is, I copy, the existing student copies its features onto that best pixel, most similar pixel. So the random pixel changes to an existing student immediately. And not only it changes the center pixel, it says that, okay, I have these features. I am a graduate student, and for example, my age is this. I was born here. These features influence the neighboring pixels, and the neighboring pixels are also updated with a certain neighborhood. This is all done not probabilistically. I mean, not probabilistically. Sorry, by using a Gaussian function. We say that you influence the closest neighbors more compared to your far neighbors. So it's like the student comes here, and the random points close to this center point become closer to those features. For example, we could have previously our maybe ages, for example, around this could be something like this: 25, 18, 19, 30, 27, for example. Initially, the random ages of students around this, it was like this. When the real student says that I'm 21 years old, what will happen is that this is going to, for example, maybe increase to 20. This is going to decrease to 23. This is going to decrease to 24. This is going to decrease to 22. This is going to increase to 20, for example. Okay, did you see what I meant? I mean, the neighboring pixels became closer to 2021. Their features, their age features, resembled this actual student. And this resemblance continues until up to a certain neighborhood around the center pixel. But it's exactly like dropping a bomb here, okay? Select the student, we dropped it onto this map, and on this map, these features, features influence the remaining features around here. Now, the important thing here is what will happen in the next iteration. We select, again, randomly, another student from these 400 students. Okay, we select randomly another student from these 400 students, and we do the same thing. We try to find the best pixel. We try to find the best matching pixel on this random map. Now, the main premise, I mean, the self-organizing maps works because imagine at the first iteration, I selected student A, and at the second iteration, I selected student B. Now, if student B was really similar to student A, okay, they share certain features, student B is going to be more likely to have its best pixel around this neighborhood. If you can understand this point, it means that you understood self-organizing maps. That's the main basic thing. That's why self-organizing map promises a good algorithm. I'm going to repeat this again. If student B actually has certain similarities to the first student A we selected in the first iteration, what we did at the end of first iteration was there were some random pixels around it. They are not exactly student A, but we made those random samples similar to student A by modifying some features. As you can see, the features, they were completely random. It was 30, 18, 17, it was completely random around here. But after we dropped this age 21 here, the age values became similar to student A. Now, at the following iteration, when student B shares certain features with student A, like age, for example, its best pixel is more likely to be around this region. Okay, that's the main thing. Because we modified some random values to resemble A, if B is also resembling A, B more likely to have its best neighbor around here. But the algorithm is really random, meaning that it was randomly initialized. It may be, if you can say, how do you guarantee B is going to be here? I cannot guarantee it. At the second iteration, B may drop here as well. Okay, there may be a certain random pixel here at this edge with very similar values to student B, because those were randomly initialized. I cannot guarantee this. Okay, the algorithm does not guarantee B to be in this region, but it says by making A influence around its neighborhood, it becomes more likely. It's a higher probability. If this was completely random, a completely uniformly distributed random map, the probability that B is going to end up in a nearby location at the second iteration is higher compared to other random locations, because if you modify this region to resemble A. If B is close to A, it's going to end up here. If B is really different student from A, then it may end up here, for example, and it may also influence another way. So it's going to be a different student influencing another region. Okay, so we are going to see regions appearing, so certain student groups are going to have their locations, they are going to occupy certain regions on this map, and this is how we are going to proceed 1,000 iterations. And at the end, when we look at our map, we are going to see the general natural groups of students in the sample set of 400 students. So that's how self-organizing maps works. However, there is another critical thing, which is it's very similar to simulated annealing algorithm. We haven't talked about simulated annealing yet, but I'm going to tell you the idea. If this update of neighborhood continues all the way until to the end of these 1,000 iterations, at the end we may not end up with a very stable map. I mean, each pixel is influencing a lot of things at each iteration is not a good idea. So what self-organizing maps does is that as the iterations progress from the first iteration to the 10th, to the 1,000th iteration, the influence of these pixels and their neighborhoods decreases each time. So it's like initially we drop really strong bombs, influences everywhere on the map, but as the time goes on, the effect of the bomb is going to decrease and decrease and decrease and decrease. So it's going to end up a more stable final map is going to be produced with this idea. Now, I'm going to quickly demonstrate this self-organizing maps on this applet. Can I zoom in? Probably. Yeah, I can, but the applet size is constant. Okay, so here we don't have students to cluster, but we have colors. Because colors are easily to visualize, you'll understand the effect of these clusters. Because these three-dimensional colors, at each pixel location, we have 3 numbers. Okay, this our struct here is RGB values, red, green, blue values for each pixel. Apart being from integers, you can also visually display them as a color. Okay, that's why it's easy to visualize this. They have made this example about self-organizing maps. Now, we have how many? Okay, we have a number of points. For 100 iterations, we are going to perform the self-organizing map. So initially, we may want to cluster, for example, 50 colors. We have 50 colors on our hand. For example, it may be the new catalog of a painting color, for example, okay, the Filli Boya new catalog. They may want to put on the catalog where to put, on which page, to put which color on which page. Okay, you need to group these 50 colors. Which colors are similar to each other? You need to put similar colors on a single page. So how do what you need is a clustering. You need a way to cluster these colors and put them on separate pages on the catalog. So what you do is you start with this random colors. These colors, I emphasize, are not colors on the real catalog. They are random colors. They are not real, on our example, Filli Boya example, they are not real Filli Boya colors. They are just random colors. Our map is initialized randomly by random colors. Now, what happens? So is this step 1 or, yeah, I think this is one step further. At the first iteration, a greenish color in my catalog its center pixel was here. On the random color map, there was, at that position, there was a green color which was most similar to the one in the catalog. Okay? And that's how I determined that pixel location. But how do you determine this? You need to look at each of these pixels, pixel by pixel, and compute the distance to your catalog color, to your actual color. You do it for how many pixels you have, for example. If you have here, maybe you have like 1,000 pixels. For all these 1,000 pixels, you compare the distance of your real catalog color to these colors on the map. And the one which has the smallest distance is going to be your hit pixel. I mean, you're going to hit that pixel, and it's the center of this greenish region. And after it's like you really take a bucket of your catalog color and put it on that map, okay? And at the center, it's going to have more effect, but at the boundaries, at the edges, it's going to be as the average of the existing random color on the map and the catalog color. So you do not directly copy your value onto that place. You take an average of a previously existing random color and the catalog color. So they became greenish, but not at all green. So it's like an average of the actual catalog color and the previous random color on the map. You take some kind of an average based on distance. It's a weighted average. If you are close to the center, catalog color has a more influence if you're closer to the center in that weighted average. If you drift away from that center, the catalog color loses its influence, its weight. Okay? Now, at the second iteration, imagine I have another shade of, this is a green color. I have, on my catalog, imagine I have a different shade of green color. Okay? Now, what can you say about where it's going to fall on this map? Because there are lots of greenish colors around this region. The second color in the catalog, which is not different from the first color, but this also looks like green, is more likely to fall in this region, right? So green colors are going to tend to group together in that region. And this is the basic intuition behind self-organizing maps. Okay? So let's continue. For example, the second is blue in our catalog. Now, a light green, it didn't fall somewhere here. But this other green, it falls somewhere close to this one. So they fall in close by regions. Now we have a reddish component here, another blue. So another blue fall into the same region below, okay? Because this region is more bluish, this region is now greenish, light green or yellowish, and this is reddish. Now they're having their territories around themselves. So another red-like color is not going to have its best matching pixel here or here or here. It's going to be here. If I have another reddish color in my catalog, it's going to more lean towards that territory. And at each iteration, the effect of this bump is decreasing. And at the end, if you continue this iteration, these regions are going to stabilize, the effects are going to decrease. And at the end, we are going to have a picture like this. So what does this picture tell us? This picture tells us that, okay, there are certain, in your catalog, these are the colors that look like this. And these colors, for example, like hot colors, there are green, pink colors, and there are like cold colors, blue, light blue, and colors like this. So it just gives you a visualization. And you can say that by looking at this cluster, you can group maybe into 4. You say that let's put these colors, bright colors on one page, dark colors on another page, these pastel colors maybe in another page. So you may have 3 clusters of colors on your catalog initially. So this is a way to visualize the actual data points. But as you can see, in order to actually find the clusters, you need to post-process this image. I mean, this image just gives you something visual. In order to find out how many groups of colors I have, what are the clusters, you need to post-process this image to identify the boundaries. For example, this region here, this territory here, is different from this territory here. You need to post-process this image to identify that, which regions are similar or different to each other. And to aid us in this post-processing, there's the self-organizing map is actually visualized like this. It's the same map, okay? The same map, but it's a different kind of visualizing the same map. And what is this map? This map is a grayscale map which shows which shows the distance between nearby pixels. Dark regions, they're like valleys. They indicate larger distances between neighbors. And smaller distances between neighbors are indicated by bright white colors. So it shows that pixels around this region, for example, they have all similar values to themselves, but they are different than the pixels in this region or in this region. So there's a sharp change between their features in around this valley. So we can identify these hills, bumps on this map to reveal our clusters. Okay, there may be, you can say, for example, there may be 3 clusters or 4 clusters, one of them, one large cluster here, another cluster here, another cluster here. You can have 3 clusters, or you can, again, you can do something hierarchical. For example, this large cluster maybe also maybe split into 3 parts. There's a not so shallow valley within it. Okay, so we need to post-process this image at the end to find the clusters. Okay, so this is how self-organizing map works, and I'm going to go over the slides at the beginning of our next lecture. Next week is our last week. I'm going to finish self-organizing map in the first 10 minutes because I've already finished it. I just talk about it without going over the slides. I'm going to talk about the mathematical details of it. Okay, I mean, how do we, for example, this is the algorithm, how do we make this effect? How do we make a pixel resemble ourselves? I'm going to talk about some distance measures, a way to update the pixels in the first 10 minutes of the next lecture. And next week we are going to finish this course with biological networks. Okay, what are biological networks? This is the final type of data, a graphical graph structures. And analyzing these biological networks, how do we analyze, which algorithms are there? We are going to finish our course with biological networks next week. Also, do not forget to fill in the course evaluation form, online course evaluation, okay? Your feedback is important. You can also write textual free text feedback, which we read them. So please, if you have any comments about the course to make it better, please use the online course evaluation form. I think it's the end, at the end of next week, I think it's the last time. The deadline is at the end of next week, 27th or 28th of May.